Hello, hello, hello. I am Jadea Jackson, and I have with me a guest today. I have two lovely guests, two colleagues. One is Tracy Robinson from Lots of Love Counseling LLC, and of course, our favorite co-host, Dr. Natasha Lamar of The Wise Inc. And Tracy, since you're new with us today, why don't you take like a minute just to tell people what area of therapy you focus in?
Hi again, I am Tracy Robeson. My focus is grief. I'm a certified grief specialist, which I enjoy talking to people about grief and helping them cope through the process of grief. As long as you know, grief is not one-way street. It can go around and around and around, and I am your grief specialist, Tracy Robeson, with Lots of Love Counseling.
Awesome, awesome. And because of um, the last 2 years, we've been, of course, dealing with COVID and a lot of unexpected death. And one of the things that I learned from you, Tracy, is that grief doesn't have to deal with the loss of a loved one. It can be the loss of several things, like you share. It's about the loss of a connection. So if you're interested, if you're going through some difficulties in your life around grief, check her out. So today's topic is about this really fantastic show that my colleague Dr. Lamar shared with us to watch,
Yes.
and it's called Unprisoned. So you're going to get the therapist review of the show Unprisoned.
I
So
love
first,
it.
I, so first, I want to start off by saying this is just our opinions about the show
Yes.
as therapists, and and we're just gonna jump right in. So, ladies, what did you think about it? And number one, Dr. Lamar, thank you for telling us about it
Yes.
because it was really for me, it was an interesting show because they named my hometown in it. It wasn't,
Really?
I mean, the actual city wasn't it, but I was like, where did they get how did they reach and get that town? But that's an aside. What did you ladies think of the show?
You can
Tracy, you
start,
want to
Dr.
talk?
Lamar.
Oh, okay. So first of all, I was so excited. I think I'm not into like gory, scary, action-packed movies. And so my husband's like, I got a movie for you. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, unprisoned. I'm like, is it about the prison system? He's like, no, go look at the preview. So I looked at the preview and it was her name is Kerry Washington. And I love Kerry Washington. And I don't know the other guy's name who was her father, but he's really popular too and a really good actor. And it wasn't like a Tubi movie, like no shade on Tubi, but I really wanted to see some good acting. And so I started watching it and I was like, oh my God. And I was so excited, like in my core, and I excite easily. But I was so excited and I felt so connected to the movie. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to share with my colleagues. So I reached out to JaiDei, reached out to Tracy Robeson, reached out to another colleague of mine. I'm like, you got to watch this show. The interesting thing that I want to say, and I want to pass it along, was it wasn't just about a little girl or a little boy who had daddy or mommy issues. You can relate to this show in so many different areas and see some of your stuff. And I thought that's why it was so powerful. And I can't wait until we get into the review of this show. But what did you think about it, Tracy?
Oh my goodness. When you told me to watch it Saturday, I was just in awe. It was one of the best portrayed therapists to me because she knew the language. She knew our language, what we speak. I was like, oh my goodness. And I've actually watched it twice because the first time I watched it and the second time I went back and actually took notes. So I'm ready to get into it too, JD. Just take us there.
Okay, awesome. Well, the first thing that I love about the show, and I have also had my a couple of my clients watch the show, is that it talks about child parts. And to me, that is, and I love that little girl. She is. But the thing that I loved about the child parts is that one of the things that we don't realize, or when I'm working with my clients, they don't realize that something happened to them, right? And if they don't have that thing addressed as a child, then they will get emotionally stunted or spiritually or mentally stunted at that age, but their body will continue to grow. And so when something happens that triggers that unresolved child part, that age, then that's who takes over and runs the interaction, runs the show per se. And that's what I really love. And that's the thing that I'm wanting my clients to begin to see, because I'm talking to them about what happened to you. Because that's a book also, what happened to you. But for them to begin to look at something happened and I haven't begun to deal with that thing that happens. And when I get triggered, what's being triggered is this child part that's longing to be soothed and comforted and nurtured. That's what I saw when I looked at it. That's what I'm tapping into. Now, there are a lot of other things that were there, but that's the main thing when I'm working with my clients is the child part. What is it that you all saw that had you be excited outside of the good acting?
How you got parented is how you get partnered. I love that. That was like in the beginning when I heard that, I was like, okay, that was an aha moment for me because I had never heard it like that before. So I'm just going to look at life a little differently just with that sentence. It just stuck out to me, that part. There's so many parts stuck out, but that's one I really will take away.
I like that. And you're right. It has so many like good nuggets, which
Yes.
people need right now. Because people now can relate to these nuggets, these little bite size of information that they can then begin to integrate into their everyday interaction. Dr. Lamar, what about you?
First of all, I want to say something. I forgot about that part. Listen, I say this all the time. Marriage is about partnership, not parenthood, right? It's about partnering. So when she said that, and I forgot about that when Tracy, I thought that was like, oh my gosh, how you were parented is how you partner. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So we're going to get into that. But you know, the part that was for me when she was fussing at her dad. Now she is a therapist, and this is what I like too. As a therapist, it showed that we're not perfect. We have our own struggles. We have our own inner wounds and inner child that needs to be healed. But the part that jumped out to me that I said to myself is, do you want to be right or do you want to be healed? That's what her dad said to her when she was advocating for herself. And she was saying how this lady didn't take care of her and how this lady didn't love her and how this lady was so wild. And he was saying, but she loves you and she did the best that she could. I did the best that I could. And he was like, do you want to be right? Or do you want to be free? And I was like, because she was holding on to this anger and it was causing bondage and it was causing this anger and this hurt and this rage in her. And she couldn't allow herself to be free and welcome in love and other meaningful relationships. So for me, when I'm going through something, I'm like, I got to tell him how I feel. I got to tell him what's going on. And I say to myself, do you want to be right? Or do you want to be free? So for me, that was the biggest takeaway that I got. One of the biggest takeaways that I got.
Yeah, those are very good nuggets right there, because once again, in life, we get so attached to being right that we don't realize we're keeping ourselves frozen and we're keeping the pain and we keep dealing with it versus like, you know what? Let me let this go. At the end of the day, I'd rather be free than to be right.
Yeah.
So
what was your biggest part?
For me?
Yeah.
Well, I don't recall any sayings that she had. I liked I just like the child part. I like how the little girl would pop out. And the thing that I liked when the little girl would pop out, she actually went with her. And that's what happens when that little person of ours pop out. We began to do and listen to that little person and allow that little person to take the show. When she's like, come on, let's go. You don't need this. We don't. Well, she even cursed. I was like, oh, this little girl is cursing and everything. Yeah. So if you had to have one of your clients look at the show, is there any particular part that you would have the client pay attention to, or how would you, or would you even use this program for your clients?
I would. I will. I have. And I'll tell you this. I don't. First of all, they only 25 minutes. So I was like, that's too short. So I would recommend that they look at all of it because I feel like each segment build on the other one. So I don't know that I would say watch episode 2, but you need to see the build up. You need to get a good understanding, because the first show that came on, it showed that she had daddy issues. And not only did she have daddy issues, and they never talked about it, she had mommy issues too, because even though her daddy wasn't present because he was in prison, she didn't even know her mom. She's like, I couldn't even pick my mom out in a lineup, which caused issues. But that was in that first episode, and her sitting, waiting for her dad, just that longing for that relationship. And she did that throughout the movie. And so I don't know that there's one section of the movie that I would recommend to a client, but the entire series.
Yes. Yes, I would have my clients, some of my clients watch it, depending on their loss, because she lost her mom. And again, it's a grief is a reflection of a connection that's been lost. So all the losses, it was so many losses, and she never acknowledged or really grieved any of those losses. So I definitely would put that in therapy so they can see how it's just not about death. And once she's able to recognize the loss of her mom, the loss of her dad going in and out, because key for me also, she was able to give the months, the dates, and the years that he was going back to prison. So that was a part of her being lost each time he was going to prison. Well, excuse me, the penitentiary. That's where he went, to the penitentiary. It's a difference. And yeah.
That's very good. I hadn't thought about it, to have people look at it from that place of all these different times that she experienced loss, because she was, and to see how it impacted her as she continued to go along. One of the things that I want my clients to pay attention to when they're looking at it is, how do you show up? Like I want to look in that, like, so how does this show up for you? This is just her stuff. And I also put this disclaimer in there. This is a show that has been written. It's based upon someone's true life experience, but of course it's also made for television. I like the way that she was not able to recognize that the second foster mother, because that's what she said, she was a foster mother that she stayed with her the longest, from 8 until she was 18, and that was 10 years of her life. But it's like, I'm not recognizing that. That was the worst time I ever had. How could you have done this to me? And so she wasn't able to identify any of the positive stuff that came from that experience. She was only focusing on the worst of the experience. What do you think about that, when you have clients that can only see the worst of what has happened to them versus integrating all of it? And sometimes the worst doesn't last as long. It may be just a portion of their life, but then it becomes everything in their life when they talk about it.
So for me, it goes back to, you want to be right or you want to be free, because what she shared was right. But it was so much other freeing stuff that she could have connected to, but she didn't. But the thing that showed up for me, or that shows up for me when I see that, our brain is created to protect us, right? So our brain is wired to pay attention to the danger. And so when you don't heal that, the brain is constantly sitting ready to experience hurt and danger. And that's one of the reasons, or that's one of the things that I feel kept her in this discontent, or this frustration, or this hurt with the other mom. Because if you think about it, even the mom that she liked a lot, she didn't fool with her either. So it's like, you had a good mama, but you didn't rock with her. You had a bad mama, you didn't rock with her. And so it was her creating this separation from the both of them to protect herself. And so I feel like, when we're working with clients, if we can get them to see the big picture, almost like Trace was just talking about, how grief is circular, right? It's circular. It's not linear. It isn't a straight line. And I feel like she was struggling to experience freedom because she saw her relationships on a straight line. She didn't see that lady took care of you and didn't get not one check. First of all, you was not even her daughter. You was her boyfriend. Not even husband. You was her boyfriend's, you were her boyfriend's daughter, and she took you in for what, 10 years? And you couldn't even acknowledge the good stuff. And so for me, my goal is to get clients to see the big picture, the circular, and not the linear.
Yeah. I can agree. I can agree with that. To Dr. Lamar, I also like the part when they were having dinner and everybody was trying to say some positive things, but she would not allow them to. But at one point, the dad, I can't remember what he said, but he was like, just let her be. Just show up. She did do this for you. And I saw her take a deep breath and she did thank her. So I was grateful for that. I felt that when she said that. And her boyfriend told her also, they're trying to be here for you. They're trying to validate you and they love you. She, just like Dr. Lamar said, she has to learn to open up the bigger picture.
One of the things that I thought was rather interesting, and this is a part of it being a show, is that she got involved with her father's probation officer. Right. But and I guess in real life stuff do happen like that, because at the end he did say this was unethical of me to engage with one of my supervisees' family. The other thing that I did like when he had that conversation with her father, and even with her, to let her begin to see that she had been hurt so badly that she couldn't trust a good relationship. Even the little girl said it. If they're a bad boy, I'm just shortening it. If it's a bad boy, then yes, she's going to go toward this person. If it's someone who doesn't want her, and even even in some of our other segments, Dr. Lamar, you talked about attachment, and that's one of the things that I like that she did in the show. She talked about this is what attachment looks like. This is what's going on. So what do you think when you think about attachment, Dr. Lamar? Was she spot on in some of the things that she was saying about attachment?
So I love it because I don't know if you all remember, but she said that her attachment was anxious. It was the anxious where she's kind of like all in your butt, but then she don't want to be bothered. Like she kind of went into that. And I like that because guess what? Just because you are a therapist, it doesn't exempt you from having attachment stuff. Now, this is the thing, and I like for everybody to hear this. No one, as I lean into the camera, no one has 100% attachment. A secure attachment. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you feel. I don't care. It doesn't matter. All of us have areas in our lives that we're constantly seeking to get back to 100 or a secure attachment. And so I thought that was really good. And I think it should challenge people to see how they engage in relationships. Is it an anxious, like they're so nervous? Do they yearn for this close attachment? They get anxious when they get it, or do they avoid? Is it difficult to look somebody in the eye? Is it difficult to connect with people because it doesn't feel safe, right? Or do you feel safe when people leave? You don't worry if they're going to die in a car accident, or when they leave, you don't worry about they going to cheat. Like, where do you show up? Because people constantly think that it's about their partner, but it's really about you and how you show up. When you understand your attachment, you can show up totally different. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to pass to you, Tracy. JaiDei, you mentioned about the little girl. And as I was watching, because I have a little girl, and I won't tell y'all her name, but she is about 8 years old. And I will share this. She is a firecracker. And as that little girl was cursing, I was like, ooh. But my little girl, my little girl from East Atlanta, she would have just been like, a firecracker. But the point that I'm making is we all have an inner child inside of us. And we think that, you ever heard somebody act out or struggle to manage their emotions and they say, that's just how I am. When the truth is you're allowing that little girl to be your executive function. But as an adult, you don't need the little girl. She's never going to go anywhere. And my little girl show up when she's feeling taken advantage of or abused or frustrated, and she shows up. And then I have to manage those emotions. When you're able to identify your little girl or your little boy, you're able to take responsibility for your action. And so that's just kind of my thoughts on the attachment piece.
I know my little girl too. And I can agree with my little girl, and that when she shows up and how she tries to protect herself, and how she will withdraw and isolate. So I'm very much aware of my little girl, but I honestly have forgotten about my little girl until I watched the movie. So yes, I have forgotten about her. Because that's not a one I want, but it is what it is. And of course, as a therapist, I continue to work on her. But I saw it again, so I'm like, okay, Tracy, keep doing the work. Yeah,
I like that. I like that.
And I think if anything, that's a good takeaway for our clients or for anyone that's watching the show. They don't have to be our clients. Is that there's a child part within each of us, because toward the end, when he went back to Union Springs, Alabama, you saw his little child popped out. Right, they're relating it to an incident that happened that then created his child part. And so we all have child parts. I do too. So my little girl is about control. And when I am attempting to control the outcome, that's when I know that she's showing up. And I have to remind myself, or it's about being abandoned. That's the story that I created when it comes to my little girl. So what I have to do is take a deep breath. And when I take a deep breath, then I tell myself, it's okay, because that's the piece that I loved also at the end. Because sometimes people go, well, what I do once I realize I got a child part, you really have to turn to your child part and talk.
Yes.
And love on them.
Acknowledge.
Yes, all of that. Absolutely. Well, this has been a wonderful segment.
Yes.
Thank you once again for being here on the show, and join us once again as we know and grow. Bye.
Bye.